Greg Koukl wants to equip closet apologists for the fight against atheism by telling them not to talk about their religion. Just be honest, Greg. Tell them to give up. They've got no shot at all. Stand to Reason's Greg Koukl wants to explain tactics to the so-called closet apologists, those people who've been paying him for the source material and now want to go out and debate the atheist hordes. But I think Greg knows that they're clothed in nothing but wishes and dreams, and therefore offers some advice that effectively spells surrender of their rational faculties. Tell me this isn't unexpected. Go ahead. Tell me.
I've actually been asked by people who would call themselves closet apologists how they can build their courage to engage people on issues that really matter.
You know, we ought to ask you that because, let's be honest, Greg, Stand to Reason doesn't do that. They preach to the choir and hide in their religious safe space where no one can comment and tell them they're wrong. So you're probably not the one to field that question, are you?
And my first thought is there is no such thing as a closet apologist, because apologist is someone who defends, and you've got to kind of get out of the closet to defend. But I get their meaning.
Yeah, Greg, someone who defends. Not someone who only talks to the already convinced. Someone who gets out there and can defend yourself and your beliefs to your detractors. I don't think I could consider someone who refuses to talk to anyone but religious yes-men to be a credible apologist, do you? But so many so-called apologists do exactly that. They spend all of their time telling the already faithful how successful they are at defeating the enemy, when I haven't seen any evidence that you even know what the enemy looks like.
They want to defend their own convictions. They may have done some study and they know a few things, but they're just a little bit nervous.
Because obviously, you're nervous too. And I hate to keep harping on this whole closed comments bit, but on YouTube, that's the only way to actually engage with the people who watch your videos. I get that you're terrified to actually engage with your detractors. I do. But then you get out there and pretend to be great defenders of the faith, and it just isn't so. I mean, I couldn't find a debate between Greg here and an atheist more recently than 2009 when he had a radio discussion, not a debate mind you, but a discussion with Michael Shermer. And I don't think he did that well.
And I understand that, okay, so I'm sympathetic, no problem. But what I suggest is that the tactical game plan that I talk about in the book Tactics is really perfect for this kind of thing, especially the first two steps of the game plan. You're using questions to gather information.
And that's certainly credible, but it only matters if you actually have something intelligent to say in response. Because if you can't, then you're not defending anything. And this is why I'm critical of a lot of these so-called tactics, because they're really aimed at getting around having to defend their views, instead of just bringing a lot of strong evidence to the table and just laying it all out there. But that's never what apologists do, is it?
And you're using questions to reverse the burden of proof.
No, to avoid the burden of proof. Let's be honest, that's exactly what you're doing. You're purposely trying to avoid having to defend anything that you believe, because I think we all know that you have no means whatsoever of doing so.
So we would use questions like, what do you mean by that, to gather information and get clear on what their view happens to be. And we will ask a question like, how'd you come to that conclusion, or what are your reasons for that, etc., to get their reasons for their point of view.
All the while avoiding having to do any of the hard work to defend your own point of view. Honestly, do they think that we can't watch their videos and find all of this dishonest stuff that they're pushing? Maybe they're so deep in their religious safe space that they don't even know that the non-religious even exist anymore.
Now, I want you to think about those two questions. Neither question puts you, as a believer, as an ambassador for Christ, at any risk at all.
That's because your tactics are absurdly dishonest. You said it yourself. They're designed to shift the burden of proof, a logical fallacy, to the other side, thereby avoiding having to do any actual work. That's why all of these tactics are so problematic, because they relieve the believer of their responsibility to produce evidence that shows that their beliefs are actually true. And this is why I'm so convinced that the religious know that what they believe is complete nonsense. They spend so much time trying desperately not having to back up their faith that they have to know that something is seriously, seriously wrong with the things they believe. They're just not honest enough to admit it.
You're being a student, essentially, trying to discover what other people believe. You are not in a situation where you're putting your view forward, where it could be attacked. Instead, you're inviting other people to put their view forward.
Then you're not being an apologist, are you? And that's dishonest. So let's get some definitions out of the way. And I'll be honest, I really hate doing this all the time because I really detest playing Dictionary Warrior, but it's important to have some definitions for these terms. According to the dictionary, an apologist is a person who offers an argument in defense of something controversial. Of course, that can apply to anything, but note that it's someone who offers an argument in defense of something. Not someone who sits there and asks questions, but someone who actively defends a position. And Greg here is telling these so-called closet apologists not to do that, because I think he knows that anyone that does is going to get slaughtered. More dishonesty from Greg, as if anyone is surprised.
Now you might be thinking, well, that doesn't get me very far. And my response is, you'll be surprised how much progress you can make by you asking them questions about their own view.
If you conflate progress with emotional comfort, sure, because that's what all of this is really about. It's not about convincing the other side that your argument is true and reasonable. It's about engaging with the enemy and coming away with your head still attached to your shoulders and feeling good that you survived. So long as the opposition hasn't shredded your beliefs too badly, the apologist considers that a win. And by not even bringing your beliefs into the conversation, by making it all about the opposition, you can keep your beliefs safely tucked in your back pocket, safe from what would otherwise be inevitable destruction. And Greg is proud of this for some reason.
But the point here is how do you get a closet apologist out of the closet and into play in a way that builds their courage? And this is the way to do it.
By not having them actually be an apologist in the first place.
You use one of those two questions, and usually there's a sequence. First, you get their ideas, then you get the reasons for their ideas. And you don't have to go any further.
Why would you want to go any further? I mean, it isn't like Matthew 28:19 says, go and make disciples of all nations or anything. Why would you want to risk having your feelings hurt when someone rips your religious beliefs a new one? Better to keep your light under a bushel, right?
You're just taking a small step of courage to step out and ask that first question. Be a student. If you ask the second question, then you're going to get an education on how they actually think. Okay?
Too bad they'll never learn a thing about you or your beliefs, which makes the entire exchange pointless for the other side. Because why have a free and honest exchange of ideas? That would require that your ideas are actually worth considering.
Now, I tell people just go out and practice the first question. But I suspect if you ask people what they believe, sometimes you're going to have a hard time not asking the second question, which would be kind of, why would you believe that? Because what people believe sometimes is a little bit odd.
Yeah, Greg. Why would you believe the insane, unsupportable, indefensible garbage that you put forth in your videos? Oh wait, you don't want to answer that, do you? You want everything to be one-sided so as not to risk the childlike faith of your childlike followers. Because I think that you know that if your followers went toe-to-toe with most atheists, they'd get shredded into little bitty Bible bits. Some of them might get so discouraged that they might give up the foolish faith that you've been pushing. And you can't have that, can you?
Now, you want to be careful that you don't sound condescending when you ask the second question.
Like you just did, right?
But these two questions are a great 1-2 punch that allows you to get involved in conversation with people in a relational way in which they do most of the talking, but you are gathering valuable information.
But it's not information that you want your closet apologists to have or pay attention to. Because if they seriously consider what most atheists have to say, if they acknowledge that there's no evidence for the things that they hold dear, if they start to care whether or not what they believe is factually correct or rationally defensible, they're doomed. And if they're doomed, there goes your paycheck.
And so it takes a small amount of courage to get out of your closet and start engaging other people.
Yeah, Greg, looking at you here. But of course, the religious never use that mirror to look at themselves, do they? Because I think people are smarter than you give them credit for, and the second an atheist realizes what your baby apologists are doing, because it's blatantly obvious, even if they haven't watched your piss-poor advice, then they're going to turn it around and start using those tactics back on your side, and your side won't have the slightest idea how to handle it. So they can either hem and haw and look like idiots, or they can run away and hide and look like cowards, because you haven't equipped them to be a part of an intelligent, rational discussion.
And here's what you're going to find. You're going to find it's not that hard. People aren't as scary. And also, people are not as smart as you thought they were. And I'm not saying people are dumb. I'm just saying a lot of the objections that people raise against Christianity, even by smart people, educated people, PhDs, professors, lawyers, professional types of all kinds, turn out to be kind of foolish objections when it deals with spiritual things.
But how could they even talk about their objections to Christianity when you refuse to even talk about Christianity? When you tell people to only ask atheists what they believe and why? You'd have to have a back and forth conversation to learn any of that. But you know, some people aren't that bright to figure that out, right, Greg?
And you don't have to put them down or roll your eyes or anything like that. But I think you're going to find, if you just step out of that closet, a small step of courage, you begin to ask people what they believe and why they believe it, and don't take it any further, that will really get you rolling as a defender of the faith.
That faith that you're not actually defending, you mean? This is really where I look at apologists like Greg and the rest of the Sands Against Reason crew and laugh, because either they're too dumb to know what a load of ridiculous nonsense they're spouting, or so dishonest that they know that they're throwing their followers to the wolves for a buck. None of this is going to impress the non-religious at all. It isn't going to bamboozle us with these terrible tactics. We're not going to go along with your one-sided discussion, because whether you like it or not, we're not the stupid ones here. We have nothing to defend. We're just not taking your unsupported, irrational, laughably ridiculous beliefs seriously. And if you think you can turn the tables and make it all about us, you're wrong. Because it is not now, nor has it ever been about us. It's about you. It's about the crazy things you allow into your head for emotional reasons. It's about the things that you cannot defend and that you know that you can't defend. But you have to make a living off the rubes, so you have to feed them just enough rope that they go out and do what the Bible commands them to do, but not so much that they hang themselves. And as time goes on, as people get more and more educated, that becomes a tricky proposition. Because if they talk about their beliefs at all, they're going to get shredded. So now you want them to evangelize without ever mentioning Christianity. I trust even you see how absurd that idea is. But sure, Greg, tell us some more. Continue, as usual, to stand against reason. It's what you do so well.